Greetings to everyone out there that is joining us for our very first NAfME Orchestra Town Hall. I'm so excited to be welcoming you to this first of 3 town halls sponsored by the National Association for Music Education with support from the Washington Music Educators Association. My name is Christopher Hansen. I am acting as a moderator today for our first panel discussion. I have the incredible privilege of serving educators in the state of Washington on the WMEA board as the orchestra curriculum officer. I am facilitating this first town hall, but you will hear from my colleagues later in our open forum, and then ultimately in our subsequent town halls, both Nathan Rodall and Elizabeth Fortune, who serve on the NAfME Orchestra Curriculum Council, helped sort of culminate this event into something that we thought would be most meaningful in developing and nurturing conversations with educators all over the country about what are we doing. There's so much we're being challenged with right now. There are social justice issues, there are health issues and crises, there's longevity and sustainability and retention issues in our programs. Music educators are being furloughed, programs are being rewritten. We have colleagues that are now teaching other disciplines, especially at the elementary school level. To say there's a lot going on is a severe understatement. There's so much that's happening. But one of the incredible things that we can do, especially in a time where we're being challenged, is tap into this creativity and imagination that makes us the art educators that we are, and respond with opportunities to evolve and to change and respond to the challenges that we're facing. So with that spirit in mind of looking for opportunities to evolve, to respond, to change, to answer this call that is being screamed at us from so many different directions, from parents, from administrators, from communities that we're serving, to find answers to these problems, we decided to institute these town halls. We've seen our national organization, NAfME, has been doing this under the extraordinary leadership of Dr. Mackie Spradley, of creating town halls, engaging educators in conversation. So we wanted to do something similar in the orchestra area. And to do that, we knew we had to reach out to people that inspire us, myself, Nathan, and Beth, to see change happen in our own programs and our own communities. And so we reached out to the 4 individuals that you'll be hearing from today that make up our first panel. It is my incredible honor to welcome all 4 of them, and I wanted to thank them publicly for being so gracious in giving their time and their energy to thinking with us. Even though you're going to see the 4 of them on the screen, please know that you are a part of this dialogue. We'll be asking them some questions specifically about mission and what our missions is supposed to be, what it's becoming, what it has been as music educators. So our focus for this town hall is all about mission as music educators, specifically orchestra directors, but really music educators more broadly speaking. So many of us are wearing multiple hats right now. So we're talking about mission today. I will engage them in 4 questions that Beth and Nathan and I came up with, but we are going to encourage you as this is happening. Please feel free to join this conversation. You can add your questions and your comments into the chat, whether you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook. Those will populate for us to be able to see, and we'll bring them in when we are able to and when it's appropriate. And then, of course, what we are most excited about, after this panel discussion, which will last about 50 minutes, we are going to transition to Zoom for an open forum. And so we invite everyone that's watching to join us for the open forum. This will give voice to everyone that's participating. It will not just be our panelists speaking, but we want all of you to join this conversation to continue this dialogue about mission. What is our mission as music educators? I wanted to give a few minutes for people to be able to log on. You won't be kicked out. Whatever platform you're using to watch, you'll be able to access this. We're recording this for posterity, so you'll have access to it later. But one more time before I turn it over to our panelists, thank you so much for being with us today. I would love for each of you to just introduce yourself, let us know where you're currently serving and what it is that you're doing. And then I will begin with our first question. So I'm going to pass it off. It might be a little bit redundant because I'll say your name, but I think it'll be good for people that are watching to know where you're currently serving if they didn't catch it on our flyer. So let me pass this off to Dr. Randall Alsop.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Christopher, for the invitation. It's an incredible pleasure to be with string educators. I'm a band person, and so I'm a strong believer in the virtues of large ensemble experiences. So I'm professor of music and music education at Teachers College, Columbia University, and I'm zooming in from New York City.
This is brilliant. Thank you again for being here, Randall. Let me toss it over to Rebecca Holmes.
Hi, thanks for inviting me to speak. This is very exciting. I'm joining you from Louisiana, just outside of New Orleans. I work at Kenner Discovery Health Sciences Academy. I'm responsible for the middle school music program, which this year has meant music in a variety of different scenarios.
This is brilliant, Rebecca. Thank you for being us. And you are in one of my favorite places on earth. I was born and raised in Texas, but I tried to get over to New Orleans as often as possible. And so I'm a little jealous. And hopefully you're staying warm and not dealing with all the cold snap that's been going on in the South. Let me turn it over to Bruce Walker. Oh, Bruce, you're muted. I can do that. There we go.
I got it. This is probably something that's going to happen often, so it is what it is. My name is Bruce Walker, and I'm an associate professor of music at Columbia Basin College in Pasco, Washington. K-12 orchestra teacher, a turned college professor, so I've seen it on all the fronts. I'm boots on the ground, and I absolutely love it.
Bruce, thank you for being with us. And last, certainly not least, it's my pleasure to welcome Scott Laird.
Hi, everybody. It is really an honor to be with you today and to be part of this discussion on a subject that's really near and dear to my heart, something I've thought about a lot over the last many years. I am the orchestra director and fine arts chair at the North Carolina School of Science and Math in Durham, North Carolina. My job as chair is a relatively new responsibility for me as we're opening up a second campus in the western part of the state. So I'm now thinking about many of the things that I do, both from the instructor side and also from the supervisor side and the arts administration side with the entire arts program. So it's really a pleasure and an honor to be here tonight.
This is brilliant. Thank you, Scott. And I'm going to say it because we're all thinking it. I'm really jealous of the setup you have behind you. So I'm just going to put it out there because that's pretty extraordinary. We're not all able. So thank you, all four of you, for being here. I'm going to disappear. I'm going to fade behind the curtain so that we can hear from our panelists. And as mentioned, we'll have 4 questions that we'll ask them. We're going to do this sort of round robin style. They'll be cycling through, offering their response to each of these questions. Thank you for everybody that's watching. Again, feel free to engage through the platform that you're watching, whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube. You can type in your comments. It's so great to see several people already with us. A shout out to Karen Helseth, our extraordinary president of WMEA right now. So grateful to have you with us. Mariana Vale, forgive me if I'm pronouncing the last name wrong. Melinda Wharton, so great to see you guys. So use this chat feature. You can also like and hit hearts. These responses will show up as well. We're so happy to have you with us. Without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Randall Alsup and ask this first question. Why are missions or philosophies important in contemporary American education? Really easy question to start us off. Just going to throw that your way. But Randall, please let us know what you think.
Yeah, this is a question I've been thinking about this weekend, and I've made some notes. This is a kind of philosopher's question, so you'll forgive me if I wander around. But I think a mission statement is an expression of value for an institution that helps guide practice. It's an aspirational statement. So a mission statement, like I think of it like Dewey's definition of democracy, it's something that's always a little out of reach. It's aspirational, and that a mission statement should be something to which we hold our highest values, maybe always out of reach, always something we're aspiring towards. But the idea of a mission statement, I think, is that it provides a sense of longevity across changing contexts. So with a mission statement in place, stakeholders can meet the challenges that come as institutions change, stakeholders change, and that they're designed to hold us to values as we meet new challenges. And of course, this year is the best example of that. How those of us who had clear mission statements probably were able to meet the challenges of our year with a better set of tools than those who didn't, is a guess. I also think mission statements are explicit. They're not implicit. So and that because they're explicit, they hold us accountable and they keep us transparent. So that's also something to keep in mind. I think mission statements are not personal, that these are institutional statements. So what do I mean by that? I think I have a personal set of beliefs that could form a credo, a statement of beliefs that guide my own particular practice. I think of in preparing for this, I went to look at John Dewey's credo. My pedagogical creed is what it's called, and his most famous line, you'll hear it often, is he says, "Education is a process of living, not practice for future living." I believe that education is process of living, not practice for future living. So, in other words, I think of that all the time when I hear people say, you have to know X, Y, and Z before you can improvise, or you have to know your scales before you can be expressive. So I'm getting off track, but a personal credo is something that guides my own personal practice. What ideals do I hold myself to? And why is this important? I think it's very important because when teachers have missions and not credos, so when teachers have personal missions, they can become missionary. And I think of missionaries are those people that bring civilization to the uncivilized, quote unquote, who bring religion, who bring something to a pre-existing culture or a pre-existing space. And so we hear a lot now, and we should be hearing a lot about colonialism and coloniality. And one way to think about colonialism is it's when one person or one philosophy takes over a shared space. So when one person or one dogma or one idea or one art form takes over a shared space, that's one way to think about coloniality. So this is all to emphasize that in mission statement making, it's a coalitional aspiration. You want to be careful. Again, the dangers of colonialism is that you bring your personal practices, your personal values to pre-existing cultures, neighborhoods, and societies, rather than working across coalitions, across stakeholders, with neighborhoods, with students, with fellow teachers, to create mission statements that can weather the changing conditions that are increasingly that are coming at us in an increasingly rapid way. So I just have a few more notes, and then I'm off script for the rest of all through the rest of this. But schools and universities are interesting to me because they are both pre-existing societies, and they're also communities in the making. So yes, they exist, but they are also renewed every fall with different students, a different collection of teachers. Neighborhoods change. A college may stay in the same block, but the neighborhood around it may change. So we have to be careful again in when we conceive of the job of making missions, that we don't impose a mission on an area, whether it's a school or a neighborhood, that already has pre-existing cultures, pre-existing values. Schools, because they're constantly remade, need mission statements for the very reason that they are in this in-between space. I'm trying to read my handwriting. So I think this is just to repeat the fact that the coalition building that takes place when we make missions can hold us together when we have years like 2020, or when we have abrupt or rapid change. So I'll take a pause right there, and I think, who's next? Is it Beth?
All right.
Oh, I think Rebecca is next.
Quite all right. I certainly don't mind being called Beth. When I read this question, I was reminded of a quote that I read years ago when I had to design a vision for a school. And the quote is by Helen Keller, and she said, "The only thing worse than being blind is having sight but no vision." And it really struck me as very powerful in our roles as teachers. Just in establishing where am I going with my students? Not only where am I going, but how am I going to get there? And what am I going to do when there's an incident that causes a little disruption along that journey? And I'm very pleased that we're talking about missions right now, not only because I think it's important in terms of adapting, especially to the year 2020 and now into 2021, but also just in keeping us inspired about the work that we're doing. It's never been easy, but it's always been rewarding. And I think if we have a vision to stick to, we do tend to stay strong when things around us are maybe not what we expected. So yes, and again, so the Helen Keller quote, "The only thing worse than being blind is having sight but no vision."
I think this is where I jump in on this one. So first things first, thank you so much, Randall and Rebecca, for all of this insight. You know, what's really exciting about this event is that, you know, we sit in our chairs and we sit in our locations and we think about these things in our brains, but we really never have a chance to actually be with people and dialogue and try to sort of, you know, unravel all of these things. You know, the question that Randall has is about contemporary music or a contemporary education, contemporary American education. Of course, if we start looking at the history of education, you know, it's a very evolutionary process, starting with John Dewey, and we're just assimilating to our environment. To all of a sudden, we're going through everything, and then all of a sudden, we're, you know, trying to only teach to the test. We're trying to do a lot with assessment. This question about really thinking about our mission statement is really more of an evolutionary process. You know, us as music educators, we can't just sort of try to fit a square peg in a round hole and say that it will work because it's worked in the past. And we just keep banging it in. You know, we keep doing the same compositions because we are comfortable with it. We keep doing the same, teaching the same way because we are comfortable with it, rather than looking at the actual statement and actually taking a stance and saying, the system is broken. It's time to fix it. Let's do something that will have implications for the future. You know, I am a music educator because I have fallen in love with this. I'm gonna give a shout out to Mary White because that's the reason why I'm a music educator right now. So thank you so much, Mary White, my orchestra teacher from high school. Praise be. But let me just tell you, but because of that, I know that this is the way that I can change the world. And I'm going to do my best to think about not just on how I grew up, but also think about how my students are growing up and look at what's interesting to them and make this evolutionary. So this way, the future, their children we'll be able to thrive. So I don't know if that ramble even fits in everything, but like I said, music education, contemporary education, our mission statements, it's an evolutionary process. Your mission will not be the same 10 years from now. We try to use a long scope lens, but once we get to that 10-year mark, it's time to look at that mission statement again to see if it's still relevant.
Wow, so many great ideas from the three of you, from my colleagues, and so it'll be fun to sort of give my take on this as well, and to get your reactions as well. First of all, I was so honored to be asked to do this. About 2 or 3 weeks before Beth Fortune called me to be part of tonight's panel, I had actually written a post on my blog, Thoughts of a String Educator, called Mission Mentality. And I thought it was so ironic. I don't think Beth had seen it. And when she asked me to be part of this panel on mission, I thought, well, there it is. A lot of my ideas are already somewhat galvanized, and it'll be interesting to see how they maybe morph a little bit tonight as well. To me, missions or philosophies are vital in contemporary American education. I'm going to put 3 reasons down today, and then I'll speak on each of them. The first reason is that a mission, and quite frankly, for me, a lot of this is personal mission, but it can be a stated departmental or school-wide mission as well, which I've been part of many, many times. Missions help to guide daily decisions, particularly in times of crisis. So this past year has been an incredible time of crisis for many, many schools and programs and educators. And I believe that mission, a stated mission or a stated philosophy, drives hard decisions in times of crisis. That's number one. Number two, I believe that a strong mission by an individual really enhances an opportunity for personal fulfillment in the work that we do. And I believe strongly that it is better to go home after a day of fulfilling work than it is to go home after a day of chores. So I'm going to come back to that in just a minute. And then thirdly, I think that teachers and programs that operate under a mission have a significantly increased student buy-in and investment because they sense it. So those 3 things really are guiding me. So first, guidance for daily decisions in hard times. I have 3 sons. They're all young adults. And they get tired of hearing me talk about core philosophies. But I really believe that for a high school student who's caught in any kind of difficult decision, and let's face it, many of the most difficult decisions we ever make in our life happen probably between the ages of about 15 and 20. And if you've really made a decision ahead of time, if you've decided you have a philosophy ahead of the hard decision, it's much easier to make a good decision in your own mind at that time. So I really do believe that. So that spills into my work, and I'll talk about it a little bit later. In terms of personal fulfillment, in my blog post, I actually went back to the blog post to sort of see what I said. And I said, and this is a quote from the post, "For me, approaching each day with a mission mentality is an important key to happiness, fulfillment, and a general air of positivity in my daily life. When I approach my tasks as a mission, there's a much greater purpose. Mission implies importance." Think of a military mission. It implies importance. Mission implies unwavering commitment. Mission speaks of doing something for the greater good, which is much bigger than one's own self. I believe we can find mission in virtually every move we make during the day if we want to. Or we can find a purpose for every move we make if we look back to our mission. I believe missions are honest under that category as well. So that's number 2. And then thirdly, student buy-in and investment. I believe just that students sense honesty. Real learning isn't about content delivery necessarily. It's about modeling. And it's modeling a certain integrity with what we're doing. And I think if we can always pin our moves back to a mission, I believe that students can sense that. They are learning much more than our content in everyday classes. And again, I think that's pinned right back to mission. So with that, I'll yield. And I think it's time for the next question.
Yes, thank you all so much. Rebecca, we are jumping to you for our second question. And as you saw, everyone, I'll just shift you over to a solo shot so that you know it's your turn to respond. So Rebecca, what is your mission as a music educator?
So it is interesting when we think of music, especially in contexts such as this one, to think of music as a standalone experience. The truth is that music doesn't stand alone. And so as a music educator, it becomes important to consider music from a much broader perspective than scales and arpeggios. If I consider, for instance, what music means to me beyond method books and performance pieces, I might arrive at a different conclusion. What does music really mean to each of us? And I ask this question because it's an imperative consideration towards helping others understand what my personal mission is. One of my unique experiences has been traveling throughout the state of Louisiana to facilitate professional development for schools opting to use arts integration. The participants that attend a music content refresher course led by me have exposed some really interesting thoughts for me. My expertise in music during these circumstances is not initially perceived as an asset. The participants are usually tense and uncomfortable. And it's not just a few people, it's a significant majority over years of time. What they begin to express to me is that musicians, music teachers, and professors have engaged with them in ways that convince them that they do not have talent for music. And so they disengage from using music as any type of instructional tool. Their decisions to eliminate music began with an experience when they were children in a music classroom. The damage done to these talented educators by a music teacher many years prior to my meeting them has built a chasm that stops the teachers from accessing music. My purpose in that case then becomes not only to engage participants in music content experiences, but I also have to build a bridge that restores access to music, to change what music means to these adult participants. Those experiences with adults have solidified my approach to music instruction. The mission that motivates me involves guiding students towards understanding their unique strengths and talents through music. I envision music not as an avenue strictly for performance opportunities, but one that reaches beyond performance. I am not teaching musicians, I am teaching students. Of course, performance is a product of our lessons, but I'm not imagining music in terms of a hierarchy where performance is the greatest contribution I'm making as a teacher. Instead, the many aspects of a broader perspective of music work together to add value to the lives of my students. I posed the question when I first began speaking, what does music really mean to you? I was a highly motivated young orchestra student. Not every student is. If I teach the student I am neglecting to reach every student. If I'm not adding value to a child's life through music, then I have failed. And I refuse to fail a child. Music education means to me that I have a tool to engage every student in discovering their unique strengths and talents, of connecting history and culture, and of accessing expression and context.
There it is. I swear I'm going to get used to this mute button being on the lower part of the screen here. When I love this question so much, because when we think about, like, my mission statement when I was, I guess, 18 years old as a music education major at Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, has completely evolved within the last 20 years. Actually, it evolved as of like 2 days ago. I know for a fact that I did not go into this profession to, play the Tchaikovsky Serenade with this top-grade orchestra. I am perfectly okay being on the ground playing Go Tell Aunt Rhody with 6th graders and listening to open E strings 5 days a week. I am okay with this because that's kind of my mission. My mission is to take the joy and love and beauty of music and introduce it to a whole new world of people who may not know why this is awesome. I think earlier it was like either last year or last summer, I don't remember what it was. I was at a conference and I said that, I want to make classical music just as exciting as Jay-Z or just as exciting as Beyonce. I want to show that you can do everything that Bach did, and you can do everything that Beyonce did with this little magical instrument called the cello. I mean, you can do all of these things, and it's not, music education, why we teach is not, should be limiting to only the music of the canon. You know, we have the music of the canon, and the music of the canon is great. I, for one, love Bruckner 7. I, for one, love Bach cantatas. But I also love Sierra and Beyonce and Janet Jackson. I mean, we could just go on for days on the things that I do enjoy. You know, we just recently had an in-service at Columbia Basin College, and Dr. Sue Borrego, who is the professor of education at the University of Michigan in Flint, gave us this wonderful, beautiful quote, and I just absolutely love it. And she says that that her goal is to build inclusive environments. And an inclusive environment, defined by her, is an environment to help everyone rise to their highest capacity. And that really stuck with me, because I know for a fact I'm not trying to train the next Yashka Heifetz. Although, if I do have one of those, boss, I'm all about it. I teach cello lessons, and I'm all about making sure my students play and perform to their highest capability. But it is not the end all to be all. First and foremost, I need to build better human beings, because when I'm done and I'm retired and I pass that torch, I want to see this entire profession evolve. I want to see that the future is going to make the future better for the future. This sounds so very esoteric, but it's very, very true. We just need to build better human beings. I mean, this simple as that. You know, Mary White, again, going with Mary White, big fan, built a better human being at teaching me. So I want to help build better human beings teaching my future students. And then hopefully we just keep the train going.
Wow, really appreciate both of your comments. I think everything I would have to say falls under the category of a desire to add value to student lives, like Rebecca mentioned, and to rise to the highest capacity, to encourage our students to rise to their highest capacity, whether that's musical or personal, that Bruce mentioned. So to begin, just thank you for those remarks. So I mentioned that I have a number of core philosophies that I try to use, and I thought I'd share a few of mine here with you, and perhaps they'll resonate with you. First of all, I think my kind of an overarching core philosophy for me is to, when I go to work every day as a music instructor, I want to be a model of musical excellence and sort of personal integrity. And so that notion of being a model and encouraging kids to come with me is really important to me. That's a sort of a core philosophy of mine, or a desire of mine, as I go to work every single day. But I do believe that my sort of the core philosophies that I stand on at any point during a day of work, or a week, or a year, can change throughout a day. They could change several times in a day. So let me throw a couple of them out, things that I think about on a daily basis. First of all, I would say primarily love. I want to care for the people that are in front of me in the best way I can. It really goes to Rebecca's statement of adding value to their lives. In the school where I teach, it's a resident school. Kids are away from their parents, and they're trying to find their way as 16, 17, 18-year-olds, 11th and 12th graders at a resident school. And so for me, I really desire for them to know, hey, this guy's gonna care about me regardless of what I'm bringing to the table, whether I practiced last night, whether I can play the piece that we're working on, or whether I make all state orchestra. It kind of doesn't matter. He's going to be unconditionally caring for me. So that's number one. It's a core philosophy that drives a great deal of what I do. Second, I want to be an example of an artist educator every day when I go to work, so that my artistry as a violinist or as a conductor it is part of the way I approach everything, and also my sort of my pedagogical knowledge, or my ability to be a teacher for them is very, very important. So that phrase artist educator is sort of something that guides a lot of what I do on a daily basis. The third one that I'll mention is the phrase functional musicianship. I really believe in this. And this sort of goes to the Go Tell Aunt Rhode remarks that Bruce made, because I really believe in that. And I really believe no matter if our students are working on Go Tell Aunt Rhode, or if they're working on the Mendelssohn Violin Concerto, that there's a functionality in music that many students in their sort of conservatory type education will not necessarily think of. I often say it sort of grows from the fact that I was in garage bands playing Lynyrd Skynyrd and the Police and bands like that in the 80s when I was in high school, and I was going to All-State Orchestra, and somehow those two worlds for me converged. And so being the voice of the functional musician, the musician who's applying harmony and improvisation and listening skills to those reading and sort of more conservatory-based skills, to me is really, really important. I'll throw just a couple up really, really quickly. Other core philosophies I have would be to be steadfast. I love the word steadfast. And if I can be that for my students, for my institution, for my colleagues, that's a core philosophy of mine. Move with purpose. I learned that from my theater instructor. And I believe it to my core. I oftentimes say that 75% of music teaching is moving furniture. And so if I can move with purpose and roll up my sleeves and go to work, and my students see that and they can participate in that, that's a great thing. Two more and then I'll get out of the way. Another one is servant leadership. I believe in, again, leading with my sleeves rolled up. I want to be the guy that's boots on the ground, Bruce's term he used earlier, but I believe in it very strongly. And then finally, the other core philosophy that I adapted mid-career was to find as many ways to say yes to students as I possibly can. If they ask me to step outside my comfort zone, I try to find a way to do it. I'm not perfect at it, but I love to find a way to say yes.
Hello, everybody. This has got to be the hardest question. I think when I think of what is the animating value in my life when it comes to what I do as an educator, it has to be that I'm a student-centered teacher. And I've started to wonder if I should start calling myself a community-centered teacher, but the student is an intersectional human with complex values, maybe from cultures and experiences that are different than my own. So the idea of figuring out how to be a student-centered teacher is a life project, and I suffer it because I'm constantly being made aware that what I can see is partial, what I can do is partial, and again, the best I can do is work in ways that are coalitional at the kind of thing that my colleagues here, Bruce, Scott, and Rebecca, have been saying, which is capacity building. How do we help our students grow? That is our moral imperative, to see, so we can think of education as longitudinal and latitudinal. So we want to give students breadth, opportunity to experience things that they haven't or didn't even know they were interested in, and to help them find and do something with great depth. So that means going back to what Rebecca said, is that we teach persons, and that the difficulty of teaching persons is that each is a person with a project, living their life differently in front of me, in a configuration that is complex. So how do we do that? Well, we get to know the neighborhoods we teach in. We get to know the students, their families, the history of the school we teach at. We commit ourselves to endless self-questioning so that I don't become too sure of myself, that my curriculum changes as I meet the changing conditions that are in front of me. And I think this is the very thing we are suffering through right now as we teach in these incredibly challenging conditions right now. How do we be student-centered, culture-centered, community-centered in a virtual space? How do we get to know our students when we can't physically see them? How do we design instruction for revelation so that students on their own terms can tell us more about who they are and what they like, where they're from? So I hope, this would be my hope, that much of COVID teaching right now with large ensemble educators is project-based. More ensemble directors are being creative, asking their students to improvise and compose. There are often, because we don't have a space where 80 orchestra students are in front of us, we may be working in small units and actually getting to know our students better. I hope that when things return, that we don't go back to the same old that we've been doing with large ensembles. And I think we would all agree to the idea that there are some silver linings to what we experienced this year. One of them is students enjoy personal, portfolio-based learning, where they can design their own instruction, design projects that they like, and that when we go back to the large ensemble setting, it can be a both-and situation. We can carry with us these new pedagogical skills that we learned, new ways to know our students, new ways for students to show us and tell us who they are and what they like, and that we can reconfigure what the large ensemble looks like in a both-and situation. And I guess the last thing I would say with regards to our moment right now in the large ensemble, and this echoes Rebecca's comment, it has never been more clear to everyone, parents, politicians, stakeholders, that kids want to be in school for more than just learning out of books and taking tests. School is a social experience for our kids, and therefore bands and orchestras are primary locations for students to be together and to grow together. And we need to press that, advocate for ourselves as larger than just, echoing Rebecca, larger than just the notes that we make and the music that we perform or the festival ratings that we get, that the large ensemble experience is a social experience, and we can't shy away from that, even if it doesn't sound like we're putting music first. So I'm fumbling through this answer. I feel like I put a lot out there, but maybe we can come back to some of these ideas as our time continues together. Thank you.
This is wonderful. Bruce, I'm going to come over to you. Question 3, how do you craft your mission to best serve your community? What factors need to be considered? Which factors are commonly overlooked? Bruce, we're going to turn it over to you.
So thank you so much for this question. You know, the first thing that I think about, if you know that game when you say the first thing that comes to your brain and you say mission, I'm probably going to say impossible. You know, that's like the first thing that just sort of pops in my brain. But I know for a fact that, you know, our mission as music educators most certainly can be possible. You know, we have a charge to be there for our kids. So, you know, there's a couple things. I think that I think I was thinking of this in like three steps. The first thing is something Randall touched on, is that you need to know your students. The thing is that you, not just on a surface level, but you need to encapsulate yourself in their community. You know, before I came over to Columbia Basin College, I taught at Sunnyside High School in Sunnyside, Washington. Now, that is like literally, I live in Eastern Washington. You know, it is, being originally from St. Louis, Missouri, and then finding yourself in Sunnyside, Washington, it is like a night and day difference. It most certainly is. But the thing is that I embraced being in a brand new element. The thing is that I was in a school that was like 84% Hispanic. And for me, as an African-American dude from St. Louis, now in this new environment, I had no idea what tapatio was. I had no idea what a tamale was. I mean, like, my Mexican food experience was Taco Bell. Like, that's what it is, what it is. Mariana Gonzalez, will never forget this girl, said her aunt was selling tamales. I said, I'll take some, and I ate the wrapper. I sure did. Had no clue that you were supposed to undo it. But the thing is that I got to learn so much about my students. Sure, Mozart was still going to be there, but I took the time and invested myself in their community, because the thing is that the onus does not fall on the students to comply to you. The onus falls on the music educator so you can become a part of their community. That is number one. The second thing is that regardless of how uncomfortable you may be, and Scott talked about this earlier, is that you have to be brave and you have to embrace the unknown, okay? The thing is that we're going to do things wrong. I try, and as a Virgo, I try to be very compassionate, and I want things to be perfect and look just right, and the specks and the speckles. But I also realize that I also need to be a realist, and I know that I'm going to mess up. And when I do mess up, you probably see me smile, which is, that's my tell. So I'm just giving that away, that if I ever smile during a performance, I probably messed up. But the thing is that, you know, you are working to understand and become a part of their community. You know, I cannot tell you how many times when I was at Sunnyside, and, you know, I would have students come up to me, 6th graders and 7th graders and 9th graders, Mr. What do you think about this? Mr. What do you think about that? And I was just like, well, I think about this. And you give an honest answer. And especially if you don't know what they're talking about, it's like, can you teach me? I want to know. Students are basically some of the best educators in the entire world. And when we just stop and we actually listen to our students, the path on how to get from point A to point B definitely reveals itself a lot easier than us trying to sort of fit in and say, no, you need to do X, Y, and Z. So that's the second thing. Regardless how uncomfortable you may become, you know, you need to embrace the unknown. Now, listen, if you have a gluten allergy, don't just go shoving a whole bunch of tamales in your mouth and stuff like that. You know, you're going to go in an anaphylactic shock, and the EpiPen is dangerous. So stop, don't do that. But otherwise, just embrace it, and you might be surprised on the outcome. And the last thing that I have, and this goes from the brand new music educator to the most seasoned educator that's been doing this for 30 plus years, is that we have to take a slice of humility pie and check your privilege at the door. If you are not aware of the amazing amount of privilege you have already received as a music educator to go through and complete the prescribed college curriculum, to be able to perform at a high level that you can understand and become a part of the system or the profession of music education. Then you walk into the classroom and you expect this red carpet to be rolled out for you and to have all of the tools and everything else. I mean, you can go down to schools that have an amazing amount of resources where, you walk in and your budget for just music alone is like $10,000, and that's yearly. You walk in and you have instruments from floor to ceiling, door to wall. And then you walk into a school, and there are other school districts where you walk in where you literally have to Frankenstein an instrument together. You have to take this viola G, you have to take this violin G string and turn it into a quarter-size viola C string, because you have to be able to think on your feet very quickly because the situation calls for it. If you cannot have that type of foresight and become a part of this, that's going to be detrimental, not only to yourself and your soul, but then also you are not as effective as your students deserve. Your students deserve the most effective music educator in front of them. And by doing the work before you walk into the classroom, your classroom experience, your music education experience, the profession in general will definitely benefit from that. So those are my three thoughts.
Well, first of all,
Scott, sorry, real quickly, I'm going to do this. Bruce, thank you for that. And I'm watching the clock. This is the part that I hate about being a moderator, is trying to balance the time for everything. We have an open forum right after this. And so, panelists, I'm going to ask for your grace in this moment. I want to ask this fourth question that we've curated so that in the open forum, we can all sort of engage in dialogue. So I sent out a private message to you guys, but I'm going to switch this up. So Scott, I'm actually going to come to you and ask you this fourth question we were going to have you start us with, and that will most likely take us to the hour. And then we'll all go over to our open forum so that we can all just participate in dialogue. So thank you, panelists, for understanding. I want to make sure that we address these sort of curated questions so that when we get into the open forum, we can just continue conversations. So Scott, I will ask you, how are models for instruction supported or limited by your mission?
Thanks. Okay, I'll switch gears just a little bit here. So I decided to sort of pick one of the missions that I mentioned to answer this question, and that is to model functional musicianship, because it sort of gets to the ensemble thing, and that's basically what I do every day with my orchestras, and so for me, if in my desire to be a model of functional musicianship and a pedagogue that articulates functional musicianship, it really caused me to do a lot of thinking, and I came up with a what I call the taxonomy of the orchestral musicians or the ensemble musicians' mental habits. Okay, so bear with me here. I sort of went from Bloom's taxonomy, where from the bottom of the taxonomy to the top, there is remembering. Then you move up to understanding, up from there to applying. And then at the top of Bloom's taxonomy, we're creating, evaluating, and analyzing. I thought, okay, well, how does that relate to the ensembles that I conduct on an everyday basis? And this is really how my models for instruction are basically supported by this notion of being a functional musician and articulating that to my students. So the taxonomy for me now, from the bottom to the top, kind of in that, starting with that remembering or understanding, would be reading and playing accurate rhythms and time. At the bottom there, accurate notes and key. Moving up just a little bit farther, playing technique and being able to sort of model the correct techniques for the style that's being presented, whether it's rock or jazz or Mozart or Mahler, kind of doesn't matter. As we're going through, what are the appropriate techniques, or what are the techniques that make sense? Then as we move up the written dynamics, alternate fingerings, as we get up towards the top, now we're starting to really think a little more meaningfully about what's going on, or maybe abstractly, where we're applying things that we know already, and maybe even moving towards the top of the taxonomy of functional musicianship. Now we're looking at shifting, we're looking at bow direction and use, and what maybe some alternate bowings might be, articulation. And as we get up to the top, we're thinking about tone production, vibrato, artistry, direction of line, tempo, push, pull, where's the tension lie, and even things like my role within the ensemble, or my section within the ensemble, and other ideas like that. So for me, that's one way that a core philosophy finds its way into models of instruction, or a daily rehearsal for me. So I hope that makes some sense there. I don't know, there might be a couple of minutes for someone else to address that question as well, if they'd like to.
I'm actually going to use this time to hopefully offer sort of a transition. And someone had posted this in the comment. Some of you have seen it on the flyer, and I just want to make sure you see it. For everyone that's watching our panel discussion, we are transitioning at 2 o'clock over to our open forum. So there's a Zoom link that's here. It shouldn't be password protected. You can join this Zoom. You can either do it through a web browser, or if you've downloaded the software, which should be free, you don't have to pay any subscriptions, but you can join us in the Zoom discussion. I encourage everyone that will be joining us to turn their camera on and feel free to engage as you are comfortable. We will also be running the chat feature so that you can offer your comments in writing, and then myself and Nathan and Beth will be doing our best to give voice to whatever it is that you place in the chat. But I'm really excited to be able to continue this conversation. It has been such a thrill to be able to have the panelists addressing these very specific questions. Again, I want to make sure that everyone knows that has been watching the panel discussion. This is by no means the only thing that we should be questioning or should be asking. This is coming from the brains of Nathan and Beth and I on the things that we are questioning as educators right now in terms of our mission. But the goal of these town halls is to start conversations. We want you to be inspired by what you're hearing today, and we want you to continue talking in your own communities and with your own colleagues. Even in this open forum that we're transitioning to right now, we're going to have, an hour on the clock to respect everybody's time, but please utilize these platforms, whether you're liking and following the Facebook page for the Orchestra Town Halls. We have 2 more town halls scheduled, whether you're just connecting with people through social media, or if you're just watching on YouTube, get connected and have these conversations. The 4 extraordinary educators that we've been so blessed to connect with through this panel discussion are not the experts on this topic. I tell my students all the time, there's no one way to learn, therefore there's no one way to teach. All of their perspectives are valuable just as much as yours are. So we're right at the hour. I'd love for you to click on that YouTube or on that Zoom link. I'm actually going to see, I'm being brave right now. This is an experiment as we run our first one. I'm going to start the Zoom session. I've got it going, and I'm going to mute myself because I'm afraid technology will yell at me for trying to do too much at one time. So the Zoom session is now open. If you want to click that link, you'll be immediately thrown in. Shout out to Nathan. He's here. Hello to Ken. So I feel very powerful right now. I have 2 screens and a lot of stuff is happening. This is exciting. So to everybody, hello to Amy, hello to Beth and Diana. Now is our time. It is 2 o'clock. So we are going to transition over to our open forum so that we can hear what you have been thinking and what you thought. For those of you that are not joining the open forum, I'd love for you to share this. So this has been recorded and it'll be stored on YouTube and on Facebook. And so you are welcome to share this link with others so that they can be inspired by what our panelists have shared with us today. A huge thank you again to Bruce and Scott and Randall and Rebecca. We are not done. We are transitioning to Zoom. Hello to everybody. Isn't it exciting to see me talk here and then talk here? I got 2 people that I can look at. So thank you for everyone that's been watching on our Facebook and our YouTube platforms. Click on that Zoom link and you'll join our open forum, and we look forward to continuing the conversation.